All right, we're going best case, worst case for the entire SEC. Let's start with the reigning champs. Georgia's best case scenario, pretty easy, 12-0. Their worst case, 9-3, right? I think the Alabama game is certainly one that you look at. The Texas game is one that you look at. And then maybe the Florida game, Ole Miss in there, Auburn, Tennessee, but they're not losing more than I think one of those kind of coin flip type games, and coin flip might be a little disrespectful to Georgia. Auburn, Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, Tennessee, the games that I think have the biggest chance at an upset. I think they go 3-1 at that stretch. Worst case scenario, 9-3 for a floor, as it is with Georgia every year. 12-0 is their ceiling. Mississippi State will go to the other end. Best case here for me, 4-8, maybe. You catch somebody sleeping. I don't think they beat Arizona State. I have a tough time seeing them beat many SEC programs. Maybe you slip up and can beat Arkansas or another team that's just kind of sleepwalking, get the rivalry game at the end. But a best case to me, 4-8, maybe. Worst case, this could be a 1-11 season. I'm not predicting that for Mississippi State, but they're going to be a dog in most of the games they play. 2 wins is really their worst case. But, you know, bottom falls out. Could they lose that Southern Miss game early? I guess it's possible. Look at Kentucky. Their worst case possible to me, I hate to say it, 3-9. Toledo, Eastern Michigan, and Tennessee Tech, the only sure things on their schedule. Best case, 5-7. They could find Tennessee sleepwalking. They could maybe pick up a rivalry win or a win against Vandy late in the year. But Kentucky's outlook not great by any means. Best case, again, maybe bowling, but I'm going 5-7. Worst case, 3-9. You better hope it doesn't get worse than that for Stoops. South Carolina is an interesting one. Obviously, some auto wins when you look at their schedule, but there's a lot of coin flip games on this schedule. I think they beat Virginia Tech. I think they beat Vanderbilt. Certainly got them beating the 2 smaller schools in the state of South Carolina. But Clemson will be a tough game. Ole Miss will be a tough game. Bama, Oklahoma, Missouri, LSU, tough games. I think their worst case is probably hovering around 6-6 if things just don't click. Their best case to me is about 10-2, but I think they're going to need to really overperform to get there. Jot me down for something like 8-4, 9-3. Not to doubt Beamer and the boys, but I think best case you're looking at 10-2 if everything breaks the right way and you get some of the big wins. Fortunately for them, Bama, Clemson both have to travel to Columbia, but they've got a lot of tough stuff on this schedule. Worst case, 6-6. Best case for me, probably about 10-2. Missouri will go to the other Columbia. There's certainly some auto wins on here when you look at Central Arkansas and you look at Louisiana. Mississippi State, I think, is one they should absolutely win. Massachusetts is one they should absolutely win. I think they beat Vandy again this year. Worst case to me for Missouri, probably looking at something like 6-6. But they've got a chance to be much, much better than this. Again, I think they're going to be favored in the Auburn game when they get to play that. I think they're going to have a really good chance against South Carolina again this year. That rivalry always gets weird. Oklahoma's really tough. Alabama's really tough. But a lot of this sets up very well. I'll say best case 10-2. Worst case 6-6. Best case 10-2 for the Missouri Tigers. Alabama, their best case, worst case. Well, let's start with the best case first. They could absolutely go 12-0 against this schedule. You've got Florida State, you've got Georgia, you've got LSU, you've got Oklahoma, South Carolina, Auburn. I think 2 of those are different than the rest when you look at the Georgia and LSU games. Say worst case, you drop those 2. I only really see Bama losing 1 or 2 more games. So I guess by that nature, I think worst case for Bama would be 8-4 this year. Certainly not what any Bama fan wants to hear. But their best case is 12-0 and the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. Prediction would be 9 or 10 wins, right? I think 10-2 is really fair for Bama this year. But worst case, bottom falls out. I think it's 8-4 for Alabama in 2025. Texas is an interesting one. Like many teams, they can certainly just step on the field and win the game. San Jose State, UTEP, Sam Houston, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas. They're going to win a lot of games. Georgia, very tough game. Ohio State, very tough game. Sayan announced as a starter there. If you were to lose those 2, I only really see Texas dropping one more game. I know they got to go to the Swamp. I know they got to play in the Red River. I know they got A&M at the end of the year, which is always going to be very intense and emotional, but I don't see them losing two of those coin flip games. Worst case to me, Texas 9-3. Best case, of course, 12-0 for the Longhorns. Ole Miss, they're going to start the year 4-0 in my opinion. And so I think you start there. You also look at a game against the Citadel and Mississippi State later, Washington State as well. Worst case for me, Ole Miss, 7-5. I don't really see them dropping too far below that, and I think they're going to win more games than that. LSU, Florida, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Georgia are your tough ones. In all reality, your worst case there is maybe to go 1-4, which would put them at 8-4. I've got Ole Miss's very worst case scenario as 8-4 this season. Their best case is probably 10-2. I don't see them as an 11-win team. Georgia, LSU, Florida, South Carolina, Oklahoma. I think they drop at least a couple of those, but 10-2 best case. Worst case though, Ole Miss, 8-4, not too bad. Tennessee. How will this Aguilar project work? Will they get better quarterback play than they got last year? I think they're going to be favored in a ton of games. Obviously, New Mexico State, UAB, East Tennessee State, they're a big favorite against Syracuse to open the year. I like them against Vandy late in the year. I like them against Arkansas, Mississippi State, Kentucky. You're rattling these off and you're saying, well, shoot, their worst case is 7 or 8 wins, right? I think so, unless Joey Aguilar is just putrid for that team and the defensive losses really bite them. Bama, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, tough games. I think their ceiling is 9-3, but I think their floor is about 7-5. So I really struggle to see them winning more than one of those big matchups that they've got. Florida maybe being the most likely because it's late in the year. But best case to me, 9-3. Worst case, 7-5 for the Vols. A&M, again, you're going to start out with a lot of wins on this schedule just by stepping on the field. UTSA, Utah State, Mississippi State, Samford, Arkansas. I think worst case for A&M is probably about 6-6, maybe 7-5. Best case, I mean, there's no reason that A&M can't win every game on this schedule. Now, I certainly don't think they will. Tough road games against Texas and Notre Dame, having to go on the road against LSU. I think best case for A&M this year is 10-2. I think that's fair. Maybe they could push for 11-1 if everything really clicks, but this is a tough schedule in spots. Worst case, again, I think they beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams by stepping on the field this year. And so 6-6 as a worst case scenario for A&M. Worst case 6-6, best case 10-2. Probably going to end with another 8-4 season. That's not a shot, but I'd like to see them put it together. I like Mike Elko a lot. Over at LSU, very intriguing team here with a schedule that I think is very manageable. You welcome the Gators to town. You get Alabama on the road. You get South Carolina at home. You got to go to Norman, play A&M again at home. Clemson is the tough one that I don't think LSU wins to start the year. And so with all of that considered, with the highs and lows of the schedule, I think you're looking at a worst case with LSU of about 8-4. Best case for LSU, I think you could be looking at 11-1. I don't know that I'm ready to crown them as a 12-0 type of team yet. I need to see it in week 1 as they're on a 5-game losing streak there. But LSU at 11-1, worst case 8-4, not terrible. Obviously, the LSU fans want more out of Brian Kelly, but if the wheels fall off, I don't think the wheels could fall off outside of some kind of catastrophic injury. I think 8-4 is their floor over there in Baton Rouge. Oklahoma might be one of the most intriguing teams in the SEC this year. They're going to have a ton of big games this year. You think about Michigan week 2, you think about Texas in the Red River, you think about that Alabama game where they got to travel to Tuscaloosa. They have to play LSU. They have to play Ole Miss. They go to Columbia. I mean, there's 6 games you could absolutely lose right there. I don't think they do. But because of that, a worst case scenario is 6-6. Best case scenario, this could absolutely be a 10-2 team. I'm not buying them to go 11 wins just yet, but their best case scenario would be to go 4-2 in those games, which is absolutely doable. Best case 10-2, worst case 6-6 for Oklahoma. Auburn is one that has a high and a low potential. Now, they're going to beat Ball State. They're going to beat South Alabama. They're going to beat Arkansas. They're going to beat Kentucky. They're going to beat Vandy. They're going to beat Mercer. But could they maybe drop one of those games? Could they maybe drop to an Arkansas or a Vandy if things aren't rolling in the right direction? Those games late in the year? Absolutely. Worst case to me, Auburn, probably 4-8. Best case for Auburn, I can't see them beating Alabama or Georgia. I know where both those games are played. I know how crazy things get on the plains. Best case to me for Auburn this year, 9-3. Worst case, 5 wins. Best case, 9 for the Tigers. The Gators, again, a ton of games on this schedule that they're going to win just because they step on the field. They're going to go 2-0 to start the year. They're going to beat Mississippi State, Kentucky, probably Tennessee, and FSU too. I guess they could split those last 2 games, which would make my best case for them my worst case for the Gators about 5-7. That is probably dependent on Lagway's health. If he's healthy for all 12 games, I don't think they can go below 500. Best case, I think 10-2 is very realistic for this Florida team. I don't think it happens. I'm not predicting that, but they could certainly beat Miami on the road. They were very close to Georgia last year in Jacksonville. I think they're going to beat Tennessee. I think they're going to beat Florida State at this point. I think that the Texas game, the Georgia game, very tough. At LSU, very tough. But if you look at their 3 toughest games, LSU, Georgia, Texas, they could steal one of those and then take care of business the rest of the way. 10-2 is their best case. I guess 5-7, 6-6, based on Lagway's health, is the floor for the Gators. And then Vandy, Charleston Southern, I think that's a win. I think Vandy's getting a win against Georgia State and Utah State. I think they've got a great chance against Virginia Tech in week 2. Vandy, to me, worst case scenario, probably about 5 or 6 wins. I'll say 5 because I'll give Auburn kind of a lean in a worst case scenario for Vandy. 5-7 for Vandy, worst case. Best case scenario, yeah, they could start out the year, 5-1 with their only loss being in Columbia against South Carolina. If that's the case, who's to say they can't beat Missouri, Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee to end the year? I think 8 wins is probably pretty fair for a best case scenario for Vandy. 9 feels like a stretch when you've got Alabama on the schedule, when you got to go to Columbia, when you play Texas and LSU. I don't know that I see an upset in any of those 4, but 8-4 best case, worst case 5-7 for Vanderbilt. And then we'll finish up with Sam Pittman. Alabama A&M's a win, Arkansas State's a win, so they will start 2-0. Memphis is not a guaranteed win, and so that's maybe a little bit troublesome. But I think worst case for Arkansas is probably 4-8. I think they get a win, whether it's against Mississippi State, whether against Memphis, or both of those teams. I do think they get to 4-8 one way or the other. But then the rest of this thing is murderer's row. A&M, Auburn, Notre Dame, Texas, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, very tough games. There's no doubt that they could beat Tennessee again this year, but you got to do it on the road if you do it. They played well against Texas last year, but you got to go on the road. You got to go to Baton Rouge. I think their best case is probably 7-5, and that's a bit of a stretch. You need Auburn to have a down year. You need to take care of business against Memphis. You need to beat Mississippi State. You need to take care of the game at the end of the year. And how bought in is Arkansas when they're playing Missouri? That's a big question for me. Worst case for Arkansas, 4-8, 3-9 maybe. And then best case for the Razorbacks, 7-5. Flew through these, tried to do it in a minute or less for each of them. If you enjoy this content, if you want to yell at me because I'm a hater of your team, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our content here on College Football Addiction. We appreciate you a ton, as always, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.